Hiya. This is my first video, which I promised. Mainly I was going to do videos privately for me children, my grandkids, just to let them know a bit about my life when I was young. I'm no expert at this type of thing, and it's took me a long time to figure it out, so I've had to write some notes down to remind me. Anyway, my name's Gary. I was born on the 18th of March 1958 in a place called Openshaw, which is a suburb of Manchester, East Manchester. And back when I was born, it was mainly industrial area, lots of engineering works, local mining works, steel works, chemical works. So it was quite a big industrial area back then. I was actually born on South Street, which is just off Ashenold Road, and I was born in the back bedroom, so I was told. The view at the back of my room was the Drover's Pub on Ashenold Road, which will probably feature in any more videos if I do some. And what I'm trying to do is cover the years from 1958 until 1963. I don't want to bore you too much with some of the things what happened during that time, but there's quite a few things I remember. And anyway, I'll start off. My mother's name was Olive, and my father's name was David, and I had a brother called David, who's 18 months older than me. Plus, my mother was married before, and she had 3 children who lived with us. Billy, who was 15 years older than me. Tony, who was 12 years older than me. And Steve, who's about 4 years older than me. Anyway, my first memory that I can actually remember was being pushed in a Silver Cross pram down a cobbled street just off South Street, and I can remember the pram vibrating and I was shaking, and I can remember laughing. I can actually remember laughing when I was a baby at the sensation of going up and down on the bumps. And that's my very first memory. And back then there was a lot of characters who lived round about, especially in Openshaw. Manchester as a whole, I mean, full of characters. And my older brothers were characters as well. Close by to where I live was George Street Park. I think it's been renamed Openshaw Park now. And I used to go to Elysian Street School, which used to be right next to George Street Park, but that's further down the line. Some of the memories what stick in my mind are quite spectacular, and it's the type of stuff that you seem to remember. One of them was, I remember actually being in the pram in the living room, and there was a big explosion, and I remember this kind of black soot. It looked like snow just raining down in the living room, and it kind of made me laugh at the time, and I didn't realise what had actually happened, but my mother had actually thrown some old batteries onto the open fire, and they exploded, and it caused it caused a lot of this dark soot raining down everywhere. And I remember my parents running round and panicking. That was another memory what I had. It seems like explosions back then was just a normal type of thing. It was just like, you get used to it. There was another time which was, yeah, I think it was one of my first, not the first, but one of the first. I must have been maybe 3, 4. And my father bought a tin of fireworks box, and he put them all in a tin. And we went out on bonfire night, November the 5th. And I can remember my father used to smoke woodbines back then, and he had a cigarette in his mouth, and he was lighting the touch papers of each fireworks or rockets. And I can still remember him shouting, "Run!" And we didn't know why. He just said, "Run! Run down the street, get away." So me and my brother and whoever else was around at the time just ran to the corner of the street. And the next thing I remember was a massive explosion. It was rockets flying down the street. It was bangers exploding, rip-raps going off. All the neighbours came out to see what was happening. It was like World War III. I think my dad ran in the house and shut the door. Well, kind of peeped through the door until it kind of died down. And probably that's the best bonfire night I ever had, actually. It was one of the most exciting bonfire nights I had. And I can remember going back and seeing the ground all scorched, where everything had gone off. So we had all our fireworks go off within like a minute or 2 minutes. That does stick in my mind. The other thing that I part remember was when I was a little kid, I had double pneumonia. Obviously I was very poorly at the time. I don't know how old I was, maybe 2, 3. And I can still remember being rushed to the hospital, and I remember one of my brothers, Tony, who was about 14 or 15 at the time, and he was very upset. That's another memory what I do remember. I probably had to go to Ancoats Hospital and stay in a while until I got better. So it was a bit of a chaotic life, to say the least, the first few years of my life. I remember the older brother, Billy, he was a bit of a character. And I remember again being in the pram, and back then they had shirts which were stretchy, bright nylon shirts, and you rip the arm off and he cut holes in the eyes and stretched it over his head and put tomato sauce around the mouth and made himself look like some kind of monster. And I was sat in the pram just sitting back, enjoying the sun or whatever outside. And the next thing, this face comes over the bottom of the pram, and it was my brother going, "Ah!" And I can still actually remember the fear, and I've spoke to him about this, and the things that I remember burnt into my brain. He actually still remembers. He tells me that my eyes opened like saucers and my mouth opened and I screamed, and my mum started to come in and he ran upstairs and ripped the, um, the shirt sleeve off his head and all this crazy stuff, what was happening around me. It kind of just seemed kind of normal to me at the time. Everything seemed to be, there was always something happening. My father, he was a centre lathe turner. He used to work at a lot of the engineering companies back then, the English Steel and other major companies that was in an Openshaw, in and around Openshaw. He was working all day. My mum kind of looked after us. And through all this stuff that we went through, it didn't kind of scar me in any way. I found it kind of interesting in a stupid way. And I found out as we got older, one of my brothers told me, which I don't remember, that we had a couple of bricks missing underneath the window. And all sorts of stuff came in. Cats just walked in when they wanted to. Everything seemed normal. You'd be sat there and next thing this cat would walk in. Sometimes mice would run in. Mice was normal back then. Everybody seemed to have mice. It seemed to be part of the family. Back in the old Manchester slums. The thing is about slum dwellings and terraced houses, you live in kind of poverty, but you don't actually realise that it is poverty. So you make the best of what you've got, and you don't understand about being kind of poor until you get older and realise that the majority of the people live the same in the area. And my mother used to tell me that she'd be sat there knitting, which was one of the major hobbies that she used to do. She used to make nice jumpers, sweaters for me and my brothers with horses and all sorts of animals and stuff from when we was kids. I've still got some photographs now from back in the day, and if somebody wanted one of my brothers, Billy, you'd be sat there, all of a sudden you'd hear, "Olive, is your Billy in?" And Billy's friend would be shouting through the hole underneath the window. And without getting up, she'd say, "No, he's out. Okay, tell him Jeff called. I'll see him later." And that was kind of normal as well. So obviously my mum didn't really open the door much unless somebody knocked on the door. My parents wasn't together too long after I was born. It was probably about 1963 when they got divorced, which will be covered in my next video that I do. There is another memory that I recall back then. There was a dentist on Ashnell Road who was kind of famous or infamous, and he took all my mother's teeth out and he didn't plug them, and this I do remember as well. And my mother's mouth wouldn't stop bleeding. He bled and bled and bled, and my father was panicking and he was going to the telephone box and ringing the dentist up, and they said he'll be okay, don't worry about it, let it gargle with salt water. Anyway, as the day progressed and it came up to night time, she'd filled quite a big amount of blood, and she collapsed, and my father jumped from top upstairs, near enough downstairs in like 2 leaps. And he ran out and he got the ambulance, and the ambulance came, and I think from what I've heard, I don't know if it's true, I'm guessing it is, that they had to inject her straight into her heart. She had to have blood transfusions and she nearly lost her life. Back in them days, it wasn't much thing like you can go and sue the dentist or put a claim in. I don't think anybody did things like that back in the very early 60s. So that was another memory what kind of stuck in my mind. Even though all these stories sound fantastic and unbelievable, they all did happen. And it's just something that we kind of just, they do stay with you. I was kind of lucky because the people I was around at that age was all characters. My dad was quite a character. My mother was quite a character. They was both kind of funny. My elder brothers, Billy, Tony, Steve, they was all a bit crazy. You know, we had fun and stuff. And Dave, you know, we just got on with life, and just that was basically it. Round the back where we lived, there was a big wash house, which I'm sure a lot of people in Openshaw would remember. And all the ladies with the scarves around their heads used to go and do the washing in these big machines and the old ringers. And thinking back now, it makes me sound like I'm 150-year-old, and sometimes I feel that way, but I've still got to get on with life. And that was kind of the local community centre in a way, because all the women got together and had a bit of a chit chat and a bit of a gossip about certain things. Also close there was a hairdresser's just on the corner near the Drover's pub at the back of our house. There was a hairdresser's, and I can still remember my mother going in to make an appointment, and I looked down Ashton Old Road and I seen something really strange, which was a train passing the road, because there was train lines which dissected the road from the English steel to another works on the other side. And on the back of this train was a big boat, and I looked, and it's the first boat that I've ever seen in my life going across Ashton Road. And that, things like that stuck in my mind. And I remember my mother coming out, and I said, Mum, I just seen a boat just cross the road. And you know, she looked at me like it was crazy, you know, probably this kid needs some counselling. Well, that's another memory that I had of them days. And I enjoyed most of it. And sometimes I remembered at bedtime, if my dad was working nights and my mother was looking after us and it was bedtime, and she'd say, right, go to bed. And we'd be chattering in bed, having a talk and messing about, fooling around. And next door to us at the time lived a policeman and his family. And my mother used to put this policeman's voice on, and she'd shout upstairs, get to sleep, you know, this is so-and-so, the police, you know, if you don't go to sleep, we'll come and take you away. And I used to cry. And one of my brothers, Steve, used to say, it's my mum, don't worry, it's my mum. But I wasn't too sure. So she was quite good with the voices. And that's another memory that sticks in my mind from back then. Another memory that I've got is Tony, who, like I said, was 13 years older than me. So he'd be about 13, He'd be about 16 or 17, and he used to have an air rifle. And he used to say to me, "Come on, Gary, let's go. I'll take you to the canal to get some rats." And we used to walk up Ashton Hall Road to the canal bridge, and underneath ran the Stockport branch of the Ashton Canal. And we'd go down the steps, and he'd get his rifle out, and we'd be looking for rats anywhere to. If he caught rats, he'd shoot them. And back then, if you caught a rat and cut its tail off to prove that you killed a rat, you got money off the Manchester Council, probably about 12.5p in today's money. But you was doing the council's job for him. You was clearing up all the vermin. Because the canal, there was so many companies going along the canal that created all these rats. It was a wild place. It was a bit like living in Africa, you know. It's all these creatures walking about and stuff. I used to enjoy going on the canal with him actually, but I was warned against it at a very early age, unless I was with my older brothers, because I was only a child, I couldn't swim. But canals played an important part of my life as I was growing up. I also remember when I started nursery, and my father, it was on Ogden Lane, if I remember right, which was further up into Openshaw. There was a place called the Red Wreck, and there used to be a nursery at the back of it. And I remember my dad sitting me on his crossbar on his bike and cycling from where we lived and take me into the nursery. And at the time I had a couple of aunties, one of my auntie Annie and my auntie Esther, who both lived on Ogden Lane. So I had quite a bit of family around the area, and not too far away on Victoria Street at the bottom end, 134. My grandmother lived with my grandfather, and it's sometimes, you know, as you get older and you realise that my generation was the kind of the last to move from kind of Victorian slum living to the modern living that we have today. And I feel kind of privileged that I've been around to see all the changes that I've seen down the years. It's been quite interesting. Obviously there was kind of lots of stuff happening that I didn't know about or back then, but I'm just sort of giving you the type of memories that I had. There was another story about a lady who lived just off South Street, and she reached 100 years old, and I think the mayor of Manchester came to visit her. And my father went in with some other people, and he tidied her house up for her, redecorated and painted it, made it nice for her. And that's another memory that kind of sticks in my mind. I don't know the lady's name, unfortunately, but I do remember going to see her with my father. So that was another nice memory that I had. I was christened at St Barnabas, and I think, I've not done my research, but I think it was the old St Barnabas, and I think it got knocked down and rebuilt in 1961 or 62. So I was christened actually on the street that I was actually born onto. So I can still remember playing out in the evening on my little bike or trike with our stabilisers on or whatever it was. And I remember somebody stole it, and I remember being very upset about it. I also remember walking up and down South Street, just looking at the little companies, the works that was down there, and I took an interest in St Barnabas Church where the graves was. And there used to be two big stone, they kind of reminded me of like where the guards stand at Buckingham Palace. There was big stone columns, and they had kind of holes cut into them, and I remember trying to fit into them as though I was some kind of guard or something. I do remember that as well. Like I say, the first video what I'm doing is basically my very, very early years, and these, what I'm telling you, are just the memories that do stick out at that particular time. Obviously, as I got older, I had more memories, more stories, I had more adventures and stuff. But this is how my life started, in the back streets of Openshaw Manchester, which, to be honest, Openshaw still means a lot to me. I still visit Openshaw even now. It's changed down the years, but I'll talk a lot more about that in my next video. One thing I did find out, which was in later years, I didn't understand at the time, but my parents got divorced in 1963. Doesn't matter about the reasons of the divorce, it just happened. And then my life changed, my brother's life changed. We went in different directions. With my dad, we stayed with my father, and we left the house where we lived in South Street and all the explosions and the craziness of that. And then we moved on to the next chapter of my life, which will be in my next video. And that'll cover from 1963 until 1969. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed listening to a few of my memories. If you've got any questions or comments or anything, just message me or write a comment down below, as they say on YouTube. And thanks for watching, and I'll try and do another video as soon as possible, because I need to try and get my life story out as quickly as possible, so it's out of the way, then I can forget about it and just move on. And I just want that maybe down the future my grandkids can sit and watch it and maybe get a smile or two and try and find out how life was back then for us. Anyway, thanks again for watching. Bye for now.